Do you want a quick and easy way to help colours pop? In this video, I show you how. Hello there, Michelle Short here with Terrific Tags with Michelle. Today I'm sharing a quick and easy way to help colours pop on projects. So let's get started. This is the beautiful bold bouquet outline stamp set that I'm using today. It's so pretty. I'm going to stamp it down onto a tag that I have cut using the Terrific Tags die set from £110 classic Crest solar white cardstock. I'm placing it in the stamp wheel here onto the sticky mat, and that's going to hold it in place while I do the stamping. I'm then going to take the large floral image and I'm going to place it down on the tag. There are a few different ways that I could do this. I could either stamp this down onto a panel of cardstock and then cut it out with the tag, but today I decided to cut the tag out first and then figure out where I wanted the floral to be on top. I've picked up the stamp using the top flip plate of the stamp wheel, and I'm inking up the stamp with permanent black ink. Ordinarily when I'm doing ink blending, I tend to go with obsidian pigment ink because it's a really lovely dark black ink. But because I'm going to use alcohol markers with this as well, I want to make sure that I have an ink that works well with alcohol markers. So I'm using the permanent black ink today. Mine is a little bit less juicy than my obsidian pigment ink, so I am going to stamp this multiple times to make sure that I get a really nice dark impression. So just inking that up again, and when I use the stamp wheel I have an enamel dot at the bottom of the flip plate, and I like to try and line that up, so I just make sure that I'm lining it up at the bottom in the middle, and then I know that my plate is always going to be in the right place. Obviously if I'm just doing kind of general stamping like this, it's always going to be in that one place, but it does rotate obviously if I'm doing other bits, but I like to just have that one enamel dot for that reason. So just pressing that down, and then I can lift off that top plate, and then I can remove the tag from the sticky mat, and I am going to clean that sticky mat, and I'm going to remove it from the stamp wheel base as well before I do my ink blending on top. I'm taking the bold bouquet stencil set, and in the kind of packaging it tells you which stencils you want to use for which parts of the flower, but it's pretty self-explanatory on how to line them up. When I'm lining up these stencils, I do like to kind of lift up the two edges, kind of like fold them over a little bit so that they're not going to stick down completely while I'm kind of hovering it over the panel, and then once I'm happy I can press that down and you can see how well those stencils stick to that sticky mat. I'm then going to do some ink blending on top, and I want my colours to be really quite vibrant and vivid on this tag. I very much tend to lean towards pastel colours and a little bit less vibrant colours, or at least I have done in the past, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But I'm going in here with quite vibrant colours. I'm using Rose Petal crisp dye inks for this flower here and the smaller ones at the top, and I'm using all 4 shades. I'm focusing the darker colour towards the centre of the flowers and then trying to fade it out a little bit, a bit lighter towards the edges of the petals. In hindsight I think I wish that I had left a little bit more of a highlight on the tips of the petals, but I do like the vibrancy of the colour that I got. For this other flower here I'm using Lapis Lazuli crisp dye inks, and these are probably, I don't want to say my favourites, but I absolutely love these blue shades. They're just really bright and vibrant, and I absolutely love them. So again I'm using all 4 shades, and for this flower, although it's upside down, I am actually doing the kind of bottom of the flower again. It looks like the top obviously because it's upside down. So just going through all of those 4 shades of the inks, and I'm using a mini ink blending brush for this. And then I can lift off that stencil for the first layer, just being really careful here to lift off that stencil well, because obviously you can see how sticky it is against that sticky mat. And this is the low tack sticky mat as well, so you can see how well they do actually stick down. Then I've got the second stencil here, and because some of the areas are quite close together where I'm doing the different colours, so like the pink and the blue, I'm just using a piece of scrap paper here to mask off the areas that I don't want to get any ink on. Quite often I do use tape for that, but I just thought I would use scrap paper today, and although it doesn't stick to that sticky mat like the stencils do, it doesn't tend to move too much. It kind of is sort of not held in place, if that makes sense, but it doesn't tend to move too much while you're sort of ink blending, which is nice. So I've done the same thing. I've coloured in the petals for the flowers at the top, and then also that flower at the bottom with those blues. And again, I can lift off that stencil, and then I can place the third stencil down, and I'm just going to do the same thing with the ink blending, and then I can lift that off as well. And then I can go in with the last stencil of the petals, and this one here, you can see on this petal, half of it is blue and half of it is pink. It's a little bit trickier to do the ink blending with doing it that way, because for me anyway, I feel like I would definitely likely to get the blue in with the pink and the pink in with the blue. So I'm just using a piece of scrap paper here and kind of covering it. Thankfully it is pretty straight, this petal, which is quite handy. So I'm just using the blues there at the bottom. I thought I would go in with the blue first rather than the pink, because I thought if I got any pink in the blue, it's probably going to matter less than if I got the blue in with the pink, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So I'm just using the two lightest shades for this these petals here on the blue flower. Because they're so tiny, I didn't think I really needed to go in with all 4 shades. And then for the pink petals, I'm just using the very lightest shades again, because these petals are kind of like folded up on themselves, so they would be lighter anyway. So in the past, I have tended to go with pastel shades of colours. They were just kind of like my go-to. I do still really love pastel shades, but over maybe like the last year, I have found that actually I really love having quite vibrant, more bright colours on my projects. I'm not sure why I've had that kind of shift, but I would love to know if you're kind of team pastel, team brights, or maybe team muted. I do really love team muted. I do really love muted colours as well. But I definitely am veering towards brighter colours recently, which, like I said, is very different for me. So for the leaves, I'm using Green Valley Crisp dye inks, and again I'm using all 4 shades, focusing the darker colour towards where the bottom of the leaves meet the petals. So just going in here with my darkest shade to finish off those leaves. So I can just lift off that last stencil, and then I realised that I missed an area on the top flower. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I'm just going to go back in with my brush and add a little bit of pink ink there. It does end up being quite light, but that's okay because it does look kind of like the petal is sort of folded up on itself. I do think the colours look really nice as is, and I definitely do gravitate towards having a white card base or a white base for anything that I do. But sometimes if I want the look of dimension but I can't add dimension, then I like having a darker background, and I thought that that's what I would do today. I don't have the coordinating dies for this set. If I did, I probably would have cut it out with the coordinating dies and then either added it onto another white tag as a kind of layer, or I could have added it onto a tag that I cut from maybe Black Cardstock or something like that. But because I don't have the dies, I was trying to think of a way that I could make it look a little bit like the flowers are a little bit more dimensional, or that they were kind of popping away from the tag. And I thought the best way to do that would be to add in a dark background. And I thought that the quickest and easiest way to do that would be literally to colour in the rest of the tag. So I'm taking a jet black alcohol marker here. This is one of the Artist alcohol markers, and I'm, as you can see, colouring in the rest of the tag with this black marker. So I'm being really careful here to go around the outside edges of those petals. Some of the areas are really quite small, I managed to get into them okay using the very tip of the brush end of this pen. There are two ends to this pen. There is the bullet tip and also the brush tip, and I found that the brush tip worked quite nicely for me. But if I couldn't get into those areas, I could use a black fine liner pen, and that would also work really nicely. So I'm just being really careful though, just to go around those outside edges. I could have done this with ink blending, and I think that that would have looked really nice as well, but I would have had to have created a mask to do that. So I would have had to have stamped it out onto some mask paper and then fussy cut it out, which again I could have done because actually I don't mind fussy cutting, but I did think that this would be the quickest and easiest way to do it. And you can see that as I'm going around here, those flowers and leaves are really popping off of that tag now. It just made such a big difference, and I'm so glad that I ended up doing it. And for once I'm really glad that I didn't have the coordinating dies, because I would have never thought to do it this way otherwise. So just going around those edges here, and then once I've finished all of the outside, I'm just going around the kind of sides of the tag. I do go in and add another white tag onto the back of this, so I do lose that effect a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure that those edges were quite nice and neat and I didn't kind of miss any of them. So just going around those outside edges with that marker. And then I'm kind of just removing that piece of scrap paper here, so it's a little bit easier for me to see if there's any white left against my black kind of mat here that I'm working on. For the sentiment, I'm taking the Versatile Greetings die set. This is one of my favourites. I thought I would go with just kind of like a generic hello sentiment for this tag. So I'm going to die cut that from some jet black cardstock, so just holding that die down with some low tack tape, and I'm just cutting that cardstock a little bit smaller because I didn't need such a big piece. And then I can bring in the mini blossom die cutting machine, and then I can just run that through the machine to die cut that sentiment out. I did also cut it another 4 times from the same black cardstock, and I'm going to layer them one on top of each other to create some dimension. Because the rest of the tag is all just one layer, I wanted to still have a little bit of dimension on the tag, and I also thought at this point that my sentiment was going to end up this black cardstock. It doesn't, but I did think it was going to, and because some of the sentiment is going to overlap that black background, I wanted to make sure that it would really pop off of it. And the best way that I thought I would know how to do that is to do it with some dimension. So that's why it ends up being 5 layers high. I don't really need it to be this high in the end, but at this point I thought I did. So I've cut another of the tags from the Terrific Tags die set from Classic Crest £110 solar white cardstock, and I'm adding some glue tape onto the back of that, and then I can sandwich those 2 tags together, just trying to line them up as best as possible so that I don't see too much of that white around the outside edges. I'm then adding some twine through the tag. So just popping that through the hole at the top there, securing that in place at the front, and then I can tie that in a bow. And when I add bows onto tags, I do like to have one of the tails be downwards and one of them be upwards. So at this point here, I'm just figuring out which I want to be downwards and which I want to be upwards. And I thought that I would have the one down be on the left hand side because my sentiment is going on the right hand side, and I thought it would just kind of level things out a little bit. So once I'm happy with the bow, I can just cut those tails down with some scissors. And I do try and sort of manipulate the twine a little bit to get it to where I want it to go. I'm then adding some glue onto the back of the sentiment, and I can pop that down onto the tag. And I do think it looks really nice being black against the kind of black background, and then also those really colourful flowers, but I do end up changing it, like I said. So just popping that down, levelling that out. And then I wanted to add a little bit of embellishment, so I'm taking some cherry blossom enamel dots. Although these are for the cherry blossom colour. It does work really quite nicely with these pink inks as well. So just adding a few of those, 2 of those at the bottom, and then just figuring out here where I want this third one to be. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted it, and in the end I'm deciding to add it here towards the right hand side. And then I thought this last minute, do I want to have the sentiment be white? It does pop out a little bit more than the black, although I do really love the black as well. So I'm still not 100% certain whether I made the right decision or not. So do let me know in the comments whether you think I was right to change it to white or if I should have left it as black. So just adding some liquid glue on there and then popping that on top. And it does make the sentiment kind of pop out a little bit more. And I do really love having the kind of black underneath. I think that just makes kind of like a nice look to have the white be on the top and then kind of like the shadow underneath being black as well. Links to the products that I used will be listed in the description bar on YouTube and also over on the Altenew blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.